Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dear students, we are back with another part of our expansion. Now, we had an interesting part in our reading, enrichment or the expansion that we have in the book, and we're going to complete now with something different. So we have in our lesson today, we are back, as we mentioned, with what we have. Yes, an expansion of the units. Now, the expansion is a general revision of the different parts that we apply, or the strategies or the forms that we apply in our lessons. So before we start, I just have a question for you. Are you afraid of spiders? Now, I'm sure that some of us, we are afraid of spiders, and if not from spiders, there are different things that we may be afraid of. Now, some people, they may be afraid of elevators. Are you afraid of elevators? Are you afraid of small closed areas? How about escalators? Do you fear escalators? Some are afraid of dark rooms. So how about dark rooms with you? Now, these are common things that people fear, or common, we have the word phobias. Now, phobia is a word that we are going to focus on here. So what is a phobia? As we mentioned here, the word fear, so we're going to say that it is the fear of something in general. Now, people have different, or may have different phobias of different things. Now, you can see something that is silly, or something that you are not afraid of, and another person sees it quite scary or fearsome. Now, let's read here together. Now, people all over the world have phobias. Some phobias are more prevalent in certain cultures, and some phobias are culture specific, but all cultures have them. So phobias is something normal. A lot of people have them. We have here an interesting word which is prevalent. We're going to learn what does it mean. Now, we are going to see a fact here. Did you know that there are many kinds of phobia? Now, how many do you actually know? We have here that each kind has a different term. This is more interesting, actually. So, yes, we may know that there are different types of phobia, but the different terms, are you aware of the terms that are used? So there are different terms that we can see here. Now, did you know that the term for a fear of spiders, now we have here arachnophobia, and we have here the term for fear of enclosed spaces, we have here claustrophobia. Do you know the term for fear of heights? Now, this is a different type of phobia here, as you can see, and we have here acrophobia. Now, here, these are 10 of the most common phobias that are all around of us. You can see that people are different, or actually scared of different things. Now, this is something that is not generally, or we cannot say that all people are scared of, but a lot of people do. Now, here in our reading, which is going to be on pages 130 and 131, actually at the very end of our paragraph that we are going to pass by, there's something that I just want you to put in mind. Now, the paragraph here ends with a Japanese proverb. The Japanese proverb, fear is only as deep as the imagination allows. So let's just read it again. We have here, fear is only as deep as the imagination allows. Just think about the meaning here. What did you understand? Now, we are going to just focus on it. At the very end of the paragraph, you are going to just revise what you had in mind. Now, you are going to open your books on pages number 130 and 131. Our title that we are going to pass by here is Phobias, Nothing to Fear. So we have actually an interesting topic that we are going to read about. Our objectives are, number one, to apply different comprehension strategies. Number 2, scan for information and words. Number 3, to answer questions. Now, before we start the reading, we have on page number 130, there are 2 questions before the reading. The first one, what are you afraid of? So if you do actually have any type of phobia, this is a time just to read about other experiences and to learn more about the matter. We have in question number 2, how does your body respond when you feel fear? So this is an interesting question. If you do have any type of phobia or you are scared from something, what do you feel when you see this thing in front of you? How does your body react? This is something also we are going to read about. So we are going to pass by the paragraph as we mentioned, but before, I want you just to look at the words that we have here and the exercise that we have at the end of the passage. We are going to just pass by the words. You're going to see what we have here, the meanings, and then at the very end, we will do our exercise. So we have here, write each word next to its antonym. Now the antonym here, just to remind you, is a word that has the opposite meaning of another word. Now the words that we have here elevate, confined, devastating, distress, and irrational. These are the words. We are going to match them with the meanings that we have here. Number 1, improving. Number 2, intensify. Number 3, comfort. Number 4, released. And number 5, logical. So don't forget, we want the antonym or the opposite. We are not matching the same meaning, but we are going to pass by the words that we have in the yellow box in our passage. So just underline them. We are going to discuss them together, and you are going to write the meanings so we can match the opposites at the very end. Moving on. Now we have 5 questions, the comprehension questions that are at the very end. Also, we are going to answer these questions throughout the discussion. Now we're going to start. We have our paragraph. Now you can see that I colored the paragraph, so you can see how many paragraphs that we have here. And there are, of course, you know that in each paragraph, we are going to talk about something different. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the other page, page number 131, we have here also 3 other paragraphs. And don't forget that the last paragraph, or the last part, the closing part, is the Japanese proverb that I mentioned. At the very end, we have the after reading. Now, the after reading and the discussion. Of course, the after reading is the exercises that I mentioned before. So let's start. Now, I'm going to see the first part or the first paragraph here. We have the first. Now, you can see that there's a kind of story. You are going to read and listen at the same time. Now, before we start, there is an animal here, a cute animal. I want you just to look for the name or listen to the name of the animal here. So we're going to start.
John Dixon was walking down the street with his friend Len when a cute, friendly, little squirrel ran over to them. Len knelt down and gave it a nut, but John froze and backed away in terror. Although the squirrel was clearly not a threat, John felt so terrified that his heart began pounding. He broke out in a cold sweat, and he felt like he was about to faint. Why did John have such an extreme reaction to such a harmless animal? John has a phobia of animals.
So we have here the squirrel here. Did you find the name of the animal? We have here the squirrel. And throughout the story here, we learned that one person has phobia of animals. Now, this is one of the things that we mentioned before, that there are different types of phobias. One of them is going to be about animals. We're going to move on to the second part. Now, answer the questions. So before we start here, we have 2 questions. Number 1, what is a phobia? Now, I gave you a short definition. You are going to look for something else. And the second question here is going to be, what are some physical symptoms that a person with a phobia might experience. Now, do you remember when I asked you the question, what do you feel or how does your body react? So here you're going to see what are the different symptoms that a person can feel. Now we're going to listen.
A phobia is an intense, irrational fear of a specific situation, activity, or thing that, in actuality, doesn't pose any true danger. People with phobias have a feeling of uncontrollable anxiety when they are exposed to the source of their phobia. This psychological reaction causes many physical symptoms. Some symptoms include shaking, rapid heartbeat, difficulty breathing, sweating, chest pains, dizziness, and a feeling of overwhelming anxiety. When a person has such physical reactions to something they fear, they are said to be having a panic attack.
Okay, so let's see what we have here. Now the first question, what is a phobia? Now we have from the very start of the paragraph the answer, a phobia is an intense, irrational fear of a specific situation, activity, or thing that in actuality doesn't pose any true danger. So sometimes we may be scared of something that is not worth being scared of. Now in the blue part here, we have the answer for the second question. What are some physical symptoms? Actually, there are two parts. The first one, we can see that people with phobias have a feeling of uncontrollable anxiety when they are exposed to the source of their phobia. So some people, they feel anxiety. We're going to add to that. You can see another part if you have passed by it. We have here, some symptoms include shaking, rapid heartbeat, difficulty breathing, sweating, chest pains, dizziness, and a feeling of overwhelming anxiety. Now, all of these symptoms are normal for people who have phobia. We have the word irrational. Now, irrational is mentioned in the yellow box that I showed you before. Now, when we say that a phobia is an intense, irrational fear, now do you think that some things, do they really contain any kind of danger, as we can see here, or pose any true danger, as they mentioned in the book? So it is irrational, we have here. Now, irrational here, when you are scared of something not based on reason or clear thinking, not reasonable. So we have here, this is the meaning of irrational. You can just put it or just write a note here to match at the very end. We're going to start with the third part, or the third paragraph. Now we have answered the questions. So we have here a question, one question actually. Now what is the question that we have here? Name two phobias and describe them. Now actually throughout the paragraph, or the passage in general, we're going to just underline or circle many types, not just two. But here in this part, you are going to circle two types. So we're going to start.
People with phobias feel such great distress when they encounter the thing they fear that they go out of their way to avoid such an encounter. People with phobias often know that their fears are irrational, but feel completely unable to control their fears. Sometimes a phobia has only a minimal impact on a sufferer's life. For example, Janet Accra has a paralyzing fear of spiders, arachnophobia. However, as long as she avoids going into woodsy or grassy areas, she is generally able to avoid seeing them. Some phobias, however, can prevent sufferers from participating in normal, everyday activities. These kinds of phobias can have a devastating impact on the sufferer's life. For example, after being in a car accident, George Ramirez developed ocophobia, a fear of riding in vehicles. After that, the only way George could get from one place to another was to walk. And, since his college was 20 miles, 32 kilometers, away too far to walk, George dropped out.
Here there is an interesting story. So we're going to start and see what are the two names or the two phobias that are mentioned. So here we have the first name, arachnophobia. Do you know what is the meaning of it from the content that we have here? Of course, it is the fear of spiders, specifically spiders. Also, there is another type of phobia that is mentioned here. We have here acrophobia. Now, this is the fear of riding into vehicles. Now, you can see that sometimes this kind of phobia, or any type, it may be develop in something very serious. Now, you can see, like this student here, at the very end, he dropped out of college because he didn't want to go on rides. Now, there are some words that we're going to pass by. We have the word distress. Now, when we say that people with phobias feel such great distress. Distress here, we have here, it is great pain and anxiety or sorrow. It is acute physical or mental suffering. So we have, this is the meaning of distress. And you can see that it is not something positive. It is a negative feeling that people get when they face their phobia. Also, there is another word here, devastating. Now we can see that these kinds of phobias can have a devastating impact on the sufferer's life, as we have mentioned before. So devastating also is something that is negative. We can see that means causing a lot of damage or destruction. So sometimes when you face something and you become scared of this thing, all the time, it means that you have a bad reaction to it. Now, these are two of the words that we mentioned. We are going to complete and see what we have. Now, in this part, I want you just to listen and read here, and also look for different types of phobias. So we were asked to just look for two, but we're going to look for more because we have an interesting topic here. So we have here, I want you just to look also for a word that means limited to a particular location. So just put the definition in mind. We have here, limited to a particular location. Just pass by and see if you know the word.
There are hundreds of different kinds of phobias, but only a handful are very common. One of these phobias is the fear of heights, acrophobia. People with this fear are unable to look out the window of a tall building without feeling a panic attack coming on. Another common phobia is the fear of being in confined spaces, claustrophobia. People with claustrophobia commonly feel trapped when they are in small, enclosed places like elevators, tunnels, or closets. On the other hand, people who suffer from agoraphobia fear being in large, wide-open spaces, or places where leaving would be difficult. Agoraphobics generally avoid places like shopping malls, stadiums, and other crowded places. Some people develop such intense agoraphobia that they are not able to leave their home for years.
So we have here two different types of phobias, and they are actually the opposite from each other. So we can see that we have here the first one, acrophobia. Now, what is the meaning of it? We have here the fear of heights. We also have claustrophobia. Now, this means the fear of being in confined places. Confined places, what does it mean? Now, when we say that, let's just complete that people with claustrophobia commonly feel trapped when they are in small, enclosed places like elevators, tunnels, or closets. Here you can relate it to the definition that I gave you, that we have here limited to a particular location. You cannot go out. So this means that the meaning of this, or the definition, is related to the word that we have here, the word confined. Also, we have another part, or another type of phobia here. We have here agoraphobia. Now here, this is the opposite, which means the fear, being in large, wide open spaces. So this is interesting to know that some people, they are afraid of closed areas, and others are afraid of open areas. Now we have here a short part. Here, before we start, I want you just to listen, and also we have interesting types of phobia. So we're going to see what we have here.
In addition to the more common phobias, there are dozens of unusual, little-known phobias, such as the fear of clowns, coulrophobia, fear of taking a bath or shower, ablutophobia, and fear of trees, dendrophobia. In fact, there is even a fear of phobias, phobophobia.
So just imagine that some people, they may be afraid of clowns, or other people, they may be afraid of something like we have here, showers or baths. And just imagine that other people, they may be also afraid of something like trees. Now, these are different unusual parts of phobias that people suffer from. Actually, as you can see at the very end, that even there is a fear of phobias, which is phobophobia. Now, there's a question here in this part. Our question is number 4, why do people develop phobias? So what is the reason? There has to be something that caused this type of phobia. So we're going to see what we have here. We're going to listen.
Although no one knows for sure how phobias develop, some researchers believe that phobias are passed from parents to children in one of two ways, either by inheriting the gene for a phobia, or by observing a parent's phobic reaction to something and learning to react in the same way. Another possibility is that phobias are a reaction to something frightening a person may have previously experienced. For example, John Dixon could have developed his fear of animals, zoophobia, when, as a child, he saw an animal bite another child.
So in this part, it is very clear the question, why do people develop phobias? Now here I'm going to give you a hint before we start. There are actually 2 reasons. So we're going to see what we have here. The first thing, either by inheriting the gene for phobia or by observing a parent's phobic reaction to something and learning to react in the same way. So this is interesting to know that I may develop phobia just by seeing my parent or someone close to me having this kind of fear. Now, another thing just to put in mind, that another possibility is that phobias are a reaction to something frightening a person may have previously experienced. So yes, some people, when they have a bad experience, this is the time when their phobia develops. Now we have the different type of phobia here. Now we have here zoophobia, which means the fear of animals. So you can see that there are lots of types that are mentioned. Now we have also in this part answer the questions. Also we have the 5th and last question. We're going to look for the answer. Now our question is, explain some of the treatments available to people and phobias. So we discussed the idea of phobias, but do people have the chance to get cured from these phobias? Now this is what we're going to listen to.
However, there are treatments that can help people with phobias. While some people take medication to alleviate their phobias, many others go to counseling where they learn techniques to overcome their phobias permanently. For example, learning simple relaxation exercises can help people feel more in control when confronted with feared objects and situations. People can also be taught to overcome their fear through gradual exposure to it. For example, a person with a fear of heights might be encouraged to imagine being in a tall building. Once capable of doing this without having a panic attack, the person might be brought into the ground floor of a tall building. After becoming comfortable there, the person would be brought to the 2nd floor. Eventually, the phobic person would reach the top floor of the building and the end of their fear.
So you can see that actually, yes, there is a way to be cured from this type of phobia, any kind, but it depends on what is the kind of phobia and how to deal with it. So we have our answer. Now some people take medication to alleviate their phobias. Many others go to counseling where they learn techniques to overcome their phobias permanently. We have here the word alleviate. Now alleviate here means that you are using something to relieve and to lessen your stress or your pain. We have the last part that I mentioned. We have here there is a Japanese proverb. So let's just listen here.
There is a Japanese proverb that says, "Fear is only as deep as the imagination allows." People who have learned to overcome phobias understand how true this is.
Now, we have learned that yes, people have different types of fears from different things, And yes, fear is only as deep as the imagination allows. So it depends on the person and how much he or she allows himself or herself to feel the fear. This is what makes the phobia either something very important or big, or something that can be cured and not given much notice to. So our paragraph is something very interesting. We did answer our questions, the comprehension questions, in our reading. So we have this part is done. We are going to just go back to the exercise here. Now we are going to write the antonym next to each part. So we have here alleviate, confined, devastating, distress, and irrational. We passed by the meanings. I gave you the explanation and definitions. So it's your turn to just match the words with the opposite. You can see that we have here improving. Now something that is improving, we can see that the opposite is devastating. Intensify, the opposite is alleviate. Comfort, the opposite is distress. We have here released, the opposite is going to be confined. And logical, the opposite is irrational. We have reached the end of our expansion. We have, of course, the discussion. Now it's your turn to discuss with your classmates together. We have here number 1, to imagine you know someone who has a fear of cats. How might you try to help that person? You know, you can give advice or any kind of solution. We have number 2, do you think phobias are genetic, learned, or both? Explain. So what did you understand from the passage, and maybe you know something else? We have number 3, do you think people of different cultures are more likely to have different phobias? Explain. So do you think that the country or the culture or the environment, does it have any connection to the type of phobia people suffer from? Now this is something that you can discuss together. Our outline of the day, we started with engaging in the topic and talking about the different types of phobia. We explored the topic together, we elaborated, and at the very end we evaluated this topic, and it's your turn to discuss it together, and I'm sure you have lots of interesting things to say.